Thank you, Karen, and hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar today. So let me just get my screen up here so that we can all see it. So I'm going to get right into our presentation for today. What are these 5 do's that are so important before creating dashboards? So if we go to our list, we have identifying our core question, verifying data integrity, automating data acquisition, which, as Karen pointed out, is one of those areas where we're very strong and where we focus a lot. Establishing consistency. And finally, visual cognitive principles. So when looking to create a dashboard, any dashboard, regardless of the content or complexity, these 5 points will help steer you in the right direction and will help address issues that users aren't usually aware of or haven't considered before. So what does that mean when we're looking to identify a core question? So I'm going to share this dashboard that you can see here. What's the core question that this dashboard is looking to answer? Do we know who this dashboard is for? I mean, it has chronometers, pie charts, bar charts, multiple colors and views. So if we go by that standard definition of a dashboard, which is supposed to be displaying current status of metrics and KPIs for an enterprise, then sure, I guess this meets that sort of requirement. But the question on the dashboard like this is it easy to use? Is it easy to understand and gain insights from? Part of what ends up happening or missing when people create dashboards is that they skip the other side of what's supposed to make up a dashboard. Dashboards should be tailored for a specific role and display metrics that are targeted for either a single point of view or a department. So one of the very famous Silicon Valley investor, Chris Sacca, has this great quote that I think is really suitable for looking at dashboards, something for us to consider. So he says, simplicity is hard to build, easy to use, and hard to charge for. Then, of course, as you can see, he goes on to say that complexity is easy to build, hard to use, and easy to charge for. And that's something that we see when developing dashboards, going through the process of putting things from the back end to make it available to the end users. So when looking to identify a core question, what does the question need to answer? If you don't know the question, you can't really answer it in a clear manner. Every decision made in a dashboard should relate directly to that core question. Otherwise, you're going to end up with a dashboard that wants to be everything for everyone, and it's going to try dealing with different questions from a variety of different viewpoints, like the dashboard that we saw before, and the end result really is that it's not really going to answer any questions directly or easily. The only thing that's going to result from this is that you're going to be causing frustration to your end users who are waiting for a dashboard that they can actually use. And the worst case scenario is that they're going to look at that and they're going to say, yeah, sure, thanks, but really never going to apply it or make any use of it. So one of the things to consider, of course, when we're looking at the question we want to answer, it doesn't mean that it should be a large, endless list of subsequent questions and corollaries and other items for investigation. This question, ideally, should really be refined down to a single sentence that will get us in the right direction towards insights. So I have a couple of question examples here for us. So a question like this: how have our per store sales changed within regions and across the country? It's a straight question to the point, but in order for us to really answer this, the subsequent questions, underlying questions, if you will help frame this. So in order for us to know the change, we want to know, what product performance and trends were like. How does that change over a particular time period? If it's year over year, month over month, weekly, daily, those are items that we want to have as part of that global question. Are there any outliers that we should really be keeping an eye out? any particular events that we missed or caused the shift along the way. Another question that you could look at is, are there common characteristics in our manufactured parts that can predict increased production defect rates within the next 90 days? So again, you look at, in order for us to answer that sort of question, we need to look at our equipment maintenance. At what rate are we making these changes? Which machines in particular are we making these changes to, and how often? Any other material changes that we need to look into or take into consideration when looking to answer this main question. So that's what you look at, that's what you want to consider when you're trying to look at a core question. One question, simple as possible, with some underlying questions, not 5, 10, but a few of them to help really solidify that. The other area to keep in mind is that in addition to knowing the core question we're going to answer, it's also important that you really should know who your dashboard is intended for. If the dashboard is for an executive team, you want to keep it simple. You don't want to overwhelm them with unnecessary sliders, various drill downs, and other moving parts. Because if you're trying to give an executive a box and whisker plot, for example, as useful as that is, if he's already short on time and patience, and he has to rely on the dashboard creator to come on board and have to explain that to him and how to use it and what you're trying to gain in terms of insights, what are the chances that he's actually going to take the time to go through that process with you? So simplify that when you're looking at that sort of audience member. Now, if the dashboard is for analysts, then sure, it's okay to provide additional refinement or corollary investigative elements such as drill downs, drill throughs. You want to have cross references. They obviously have the skill set, they have the time to follow investigative iterations, and it's a much better fit for their time. So consider the audience on that. And so a couple of pro tips that I wanted to share with you on this. First thing, you want to engage with your end users in terms and do a user requirements gathering session. And that really is more on sitting down with understanding, are you talking to executives, are you talking to operations, are you talking to analysts, what is the main question that they need to have answered, what are the subsequent questions that add up to it, what are the data sources, what are the reports that they're using today. So you want to go through those phases, those steps to really understand how to prepare that dashboard. And also keep in mind time availability. Whether it's executives or analysts, you want to be aware of how much time they have available to interpret their dashboards and where they use it. Are they using that on their cell phones more often? Are they using that on their laptops? You want to know what their technical capabilities are in terms of being able to do self-serve investigation within the dashboards. So the key message there really is customize the dashboards to suit their needs. And then we move on to verifying data integrity. The key area with this is that you want to make sure that the data you're using is properly prepared for visualization. And this is something that we actually see people struggling quite often in an area that we work on very frequently, if not all the time. You only have so many chances to restate your findings before people start losing trust in your ability to produce a dashboard. A correction here and there is usually not a problem. But after you go through a few of these, your audience is going to start going somewhere else to get their answers. They can't trust you. They can't trust the information that you're bringing in front of them. So if you're not sure about your source data accuracy, find a subject matter expert for that data in your company, in your department, and connect with them. Verify that your assumptions are correct or wrong upfront before sharing those dashboards with your audience. The one thing, of course, that we always talk about is that you want to remember that garbage in, garbage out when it comes to data, when it comes to information. Part of this means you want to validate your calculations against source systems. and other data. So too many people skip this step because they believe that oh, calculations are simple enough, so there's really not much more I need to do. But there are very few things that are so simple that they can't be messed up with when you're filtering, sorting, or aggregating data into your dashboard. So you want to keep that in mind. A common example with this for people that usually play with this sort of data is survey data. Every response, when you look at a survey data, when you get access to those files, is every response is a row. Every question is a column with an individual response in each intersection. If you don't reshape your data and you pivot that survey question into rows, you're going to end up writing very long and horrible formulas to calculate average response scores. The only thing that that's going to end up doing is you're going to incur a lot of considerable maintenance costs when the survey questions change next year or next month, depending on the rate that that comes in. A simple reshaping of your data can help save you hundreds, if not thousands, of dollars in ongoing maintenance of your dashboard. So again, another point on data integrity. When you're looking at data, not only should you really make sure your source data is accurate, but you want to make sure, again, that it's appropriately structured. Pivot tables and crosstabs are great for Excel, but have you ever tried to visualize pivot tables or crosstabs inside of Tableau? You're going to end up with a really long formula that requires way more typing than is necessary. Same thing with recursive data structures. They're great for database, but not good for visualization. So quick reshaping, and you can cut your effort by days. Having real-time, high-value transactional data pre-aggregated before you bring that in for viewing is great. A prime example on this that we have was we were working with a client in Midwestern US, a bank that was looking to create a dashboard to analyze what they called, if I remember correctly, the term was share of wallet. And the goal with that was that they wanted to understand what do our clients have with us today? Do they have checking account? Do they have savings accounts, line of credit cards, loans? What sort of investments do they have in the bank at this point? And what else can we sell to them? So they were looking to do a dashboard that would allow them to understand that from where the clients were located throughout that particular state as a starting point. And while it's a great question and it's certainly something valuable that allows you to identify the customers and identify the segments where you can provide more value, we quickly ran into a problem with that client because more than 20% of the client data didn't contain zip file or zip codes, I should say. So if you don't have that, if you're missing that sort of information, as much as you want to create a dashboard that's going to be useful and have a lot of details in there, that's a showstopper, right? So you can't really do much with that. So looking at ragged data, you can look at this thing and it's you have non-symmetrical sets of levels. You can see the problem with this, right? So this may be designed for a quick search in a database, but it needs to be realigned for data visualization tool. So when looking at this, the pro tip for us is you want to make sure that the data is accurate and suitable for visualization. What on this you usually call it so ETL, which is extract. So you want to extract the data from the original data source. Transform. You want to transform it into a better structure that would allow us to be able to do this visualization. And loading. You want to load that data into a base system that we can use, and you have that consistency. This is going to help automate the process of handling data, and it's a great segue for our next point here. So you want to automate data acquisition. You want to avoid human interaction. Every human interaction, any manual process, manual corrections in your reporting process introduces the possibility of erroneous data and incorrect results. Every time you change or transform your data, you need to validate that the change resulted in consistent and predictable changes in your data. So when you're looking at any manual steps are even more risky and require further vetting. You want to be careful with that. When you automate the process of gathering data for your dashboard, you have more time available to analyze the resulting information. Our clients, so one of the things that ends up happening is that every time we connect with clients, especially in the beginning when they first approach us, one of the things that they always tell us quite often is that the report analysts, the people that are involved in creating dashboards and creating reports, spend 90% of their time instead of spending 90% of their time building reports, they spend that time cleaning the data. They spend that time acquiring the data, and only 10% of their time analyzing the actual results. So, is this really the best use for a qualified analyst's time? I mean, you can have much better results if you get you know a reporter that's going to be a report writer that's going to be benefiting your organization, and if he focuses on that and is able to get the analyst focusing on trends and providing critical input into your corporate strategic decisions. Much better use of your time, much more valuable. So the key message really on this, more than anything, is that you definitely want to automate every time and anytime it is possible. You want to have a dependable, repeatable, and timely reporting process that's going to go a long way towards alleviating your organizational report pains. And this is going to be from, the analyst all the way to executives and C-level management. So our pro tip on this, again, hitting the same nail on the head. Whenever possible, connect directly to your data sources. You can do this through APIs. Tableau has multiple data source connectors that you can connect to live. You can connect to an extract. If you have a data warehouse environment, obviously one of the things you want to consider is that the data warehouse is set up for visualization, and you can take advantage of that. You'll have that system as the one that you'll use for automated data that you're going to be going through. And then that moves us to point four, establishing consistency. When looking at establishing consistency, you want to use structured data. You want to standardize the process to take your dashboard from conception to release. The thing with this, of course, is that you want to make sure that it's dependable, it's repeatable, and it's a timely process for you and your team. So this applies to the creation of or construction of your dashboard, as well as the acquisition and restructuring of your data. If you don't have and you don't follow a specific process to guide your dashboard building, there's a chance that you're going to miss important steps or important information. A vital area on this, and this is something that we cannot stress enough when dealing with clients, is that it's all about data governance. It's all about who has access to what and how you structure that process and permissions. There's a variety of different elements to it that should be qualified and structured, and people should follow that religiously. So the pro tip here is really more on Tableau and data governance. Define a process by where you can obtain your design requirements. So spend time doing user requirement gathering with your audience. Make sure you obtain your data and it's accurate. You have to go through the design visuals, which we'll cover in a moment. And then once you go through that process, you can release a dashboard. And even then, it's still going to come back for review. But go through that phase, that process. And again, in terms of data governance, Tableau data governance, I can't stress this enough. Companies implement Tableau and neglect to keep consistency in how they develop their dashboards and data governance. You need to know and understand who has access to what views, what data sources, who's allowed to make changes. You want to be aware of when those changes were made, the versions of it. So you have to go through that process. The final point then for us here is on the visual cognitive principles. So on this, and let me preface this before I even go on. This section is a topic that I'm not going to be able to go in depth today because it's very long. So visual cognitive principles, also known as the Gestalt principles, are based on scientific studies. They used MRIs. There's real solid numbers behind this. Wasn't just something that some portfolio manager or some other analysts or something decided that they wanted to create and implement these as principles. This was an actual study that was done and took time and effort to go through. It's one of the main reasons actually that we offer a training course on visual best practices that tackles this topic and this topic alone, and we really go in depth in it. So with that caveat out of the way, I can say this. Plan ahead in terms of your dashboard. You want to ensure that the dashboard design takes advantage of these visual best practices. There's a lot more to dashboards than just starting to add data, than adding colors and shapes and pie charts and bar charts. Um, you want to consider things such as alignment. How does that data align, or the visuals align in terms of the dashboards? Where do you have your maps? Where do you have your clients? How easy it is to interpret. In terms of containment, you saw that rectangle showing up before the actual words. It's whatever stands out visually first will capture and hold the viewer's attention. So as soon as that image showed up, that's the thing that catches you, and then everything else just kind of fills in that blank. The same with positions. You want to know where the shapes appear in relation to each other. We perceive those things as being grouped together. When you're looking at sizing, how objects appear in terms of shape, size, orientation, it's something else that's also important. Looking at color, how shapes appear to our eyes in terms of combinations of red, blue, and green. One of the interesting things about that is that there's multiple studies that have come out that say that 1 in 12 men, or nearly 10% of the population, are red-green colorblind. So you want to take that into consideration when creating your dashboard. The other thing is continuity. Elements that are arranged on a line or a curve, for instance, are perceived to be more related than elements not on the line or curve. The last item on this is proximity. Things that are close together appear to be more related than things that are spaced farther apart. The faster your users interpret the visuals on the dashboard, the more productive they can be with it. The other benefit, of course, is that you're going to spend less time having to explain the results to them because it's going to be intuitive. They can look at it, they understand it, and it's easy to use. So if you look at, you're looking at a pie chart as an example of this. When you're looking to compare many values, pie charts are one of the worst possible visuals. Our human brain is just terrible at estimating the area of circular objects. So that makes it difficult, and it ends up slowing down the productivity, ends up slowing down in terms of understanding what you're looking at this. Having proper use of visual principles is going to help you make sure you don't make these types of mistakes. So that really wraps up our 5 points in terms of data.
Sorry, I'm just going to interrupt for a second. I realize that it's almost 1:30, and we did say that it was a 30-minute webinar. We are going to continue with the demonstration, and hopefully you can stay on the webinar. Otherwise, as I said earlier, we will have a recording available, and we'll still have a question and answer period following the webinar. Okay, thank you. Back to you.
Thanks, Karen. I didn't realize I went over the time there. So looking at the demo, and I'm going to make it simple and as succinct as possible. We're going to be looking at the same areas that we were talking about before. So this is what I'm going to try to cover with you. We've identified a core question. Core question here: how are profits trending? So we have underlying questions that are going to help us address this thing. I've gone through to my consistency checklist on this. So I understand that the audience for this is going to be my operations manager. One thing to take into consideration, he's colorblind. The data source is it's a sales database, but the actual document or spreadsheet that I have is a flat file. So let's have a look at that. So I'm now inside of Tableau, and I'm going to connect to my data source. In this case, again, I'm going to connect to Excel and just bring this file in. So when you look at this data source, if you look at the information here, and you can even look at the same information in Excel, there's about 10,000 rows of data. There's a lot of information here. There's a lot of value in terms of what you can ask from this data. But for our purposes, in terms of showcasing an easy creation of dashboard, playing with the same information and data that you have, I'm going to just do something a bit more simple to try to answer the questions that we have here. So the first question that we were looking to answer was, where are we profitable? So let's look at that. And I'm going to bring in information in terms of sales and where we're selling things. Um, sure, bar chart works, but math is probably better. And show me suggests the same. And it notices that I'm not in the area where I sell my products, so I'm just going to quickly change this to identify that this is really in the US. So now I have all my sales throughout the US indicated as little dots. I'm going to change this, make it look a little better. So now we have all the territories marked. Let's look at our profit. Nice. Texas looks horrible in terms of profit, but California is great. New York is great. The thing that I didn't go through in detail there on the spreadsheet is that has information over a 4-year time. So I'm just going to bring in that information too, so we can actually go through this and have a better understanding of how we've done over a longer time period. I'm going to add a little slide. So we can see here that there were some times where we actually didn't sell things in North Dakota and Wyoming. But you can filter through this, or you can go through the different years and see the changes in terms of where we've done our sales, where we've done well and where we haven't. So I'm just going to name this sales map. And I'm going to create another view for it. So now let's look at different categories for a change. So again, I'm going to bring sales. If you look at categories, you'll see that we have categories and subcategories. So I'm just going to create a hierarchy for this, just call it categories. And what this will allow me to do is it's going to allow me to drill down into the different areas if I want to look into more detail into it. So that way I have that ability to drill down. Let's throw profit back into it also. So we can see that there's some areas here where we have some problems. So we're not doing very well with selling tables and books. So something worth investigating. Let's call this categories. And actually, before I do that, I'm going to do another view to help us answer this. So we're going to look at the different regions where we have our sales and the different segments that make up for it. So again, I'm going to throw color into this so that I can have a better understanding of where we're doing our sales, and how well that's coming along. So I'm just going to call this regional sales. And the last view that I want to add to this is I want to understand our clients. Who are our clients? Where are they located? And how well are we doing with them? What should we change? The one thing that I don't have here is a gross margin, so I'm just going to add that so that I can just quickly have an understanding of really, is Sean Miller our best client? I'm going to remember to close my brackets. So the calculation is valid. I'm just going to hit OK. And I'm going to throw gross margin into color. So I can see that even though Sean Miller doesn't have a lot of sales with him, he's not really our best client. So this is something that we should really look into for a bit more detail. So now that I have identified these different areas and I know where my clients are, what my sales are, where my products and regions are, I can look at creating that dashboard. So what I'm doing with this, I'm then just bringing everything together. So I have my map. I'm going to remove this. I have my categories, so I'm going to add my categories here. I'm going to bring my regional sales. And I'm going to, oh, I forgot to rename this. Let me just, clients. So then I'm going to last bring my clients into view. So I've now created a dashboard. It's obviously there's a lot more that can be done with this. There's a lot more data details. But what this allows me to do is that I can now share this information with my manager, and they can look at it, and without having to go into a lot of drill downs, without having to go into a lot of additional questions, for a quick view and understanding of where we are and what we're doing, this really allows us to drill down into that. We can see that which region, segment in the country or product area, we can see which ones are doing well and which clients in those particular regions. And we can also look at the time frame on that and what our gross margin is like. So there you have it, a basic Tableau dashboard, applying that information in terms of having that consistency. So now when you're looking at creating a dashboard, you're able to try to apply some of the things that we've gone through on this.